Hey everybody, it's Ron. Every Monday through Thursday, we talk about how some event in business history reshaped the world. But on Fridays, we talk about something completely different. These are the stories that went completely off the rail. They may have still changed the business world, just not in the way anyone wanted. These are the business bloopers. Welcome to today's final question. For $1.5 billion, who said this quote and why? I'm proud to own the failure. I'm not proud of the failure. Do you give up? Well, let's talk about it. That quote came from Jeffrey Katzenberg, the man who ran Walt Disney Studios in its golden era, the years of The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King, the co-founder of DreamWorks Animation, one of the most successful and well-connected people in the history of Hollywood. He was talking about something called Quibi. Quibi was a short-form streaming service built specifically for mobile phones. Original shows, A-list talent, episodes of 5 to 10 minutes designed for the way people actually use their phones throughout the day, on the commute, in line at the coffee shop, in the stolen moments between everything else. To get it started, Quibi raised $1.75 billion before it launched a single episode. It shut down 6 months after it opened. $1.5 billion, 6 months, and a quote that is either the most graceful exit in startup history or the most expensive lesson anyone ever paid for. Probably both. Okay, how did we get here? From Business Basics, I'm Ron Trucks, and this is Business Bloopers, the weekly podcast where we unpack the business decisions that sounded smart until they weren't. Every Friday, I'll take you through a real story where something went off the rails. Sometimes it's hilarious, sometimes it's painful, but always it's a reminder that even smart people screw up in business, and we'll look at why it matters. This is Business Bloopers. To understand why Quibi raised $1.75 billion before anyone had seen a single frame of content, you have to understand who Jeffrey Katzenberg still is in the industry. In 1984, Katzenberg joined Walt Disney Studios as chairman at a time when the animation division was essentially on life support. Over the next 10 years, he oversaw the production, like I said, of The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King, a run that became known as Disney Renaissance and transformed the studio back into being a cultural force. He left Disney in 1994 and co-founded DreamWorks Animation with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, where he produced the Shrek franchise, Kung Fu Panda, and Madagascar. So by 2018, when he started working on Quibi, his track record was essentially unimpeachable. The idea was genuinely interesting. Katzenberg had noticed something about the way people used their phones. They weren't watching long-form content on them. They were watching short bursts in the gaps of their day, waiting for the train, standing in line, killing 5 minutes between meetings. Think TikTok. But in 2020, TikTok was still capped at 60 seconds. That's it. 1 minute. And it was already one of the most downloaded apps in the world. There was clearly a hunger for short-form mobile video. Katzenberg's argument was that people wanted something more than a minute, but less than a movie. What didn't exist yet, he argued, was premium short-form content built specifically for that behavior. Not YouTube, not social media clips, actual high-quality storytelling in episodes of 5 to 10 minutes, designed to be consumed on a phone in portrait or landscape mode, with production values that matched what people expected from HBO or Netflix. He recruited Meg Whitman to run it as CEO. Whitman had built eBay from a startup into a global marketplace, and then ran Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Between the two of them, they had more combined executive credibility than almost any founding team in Silicon Valley history. The money followed accordingly. Disney, NBC Universal, Warner Media, Sony, MGM, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, they all invested. T-Mobile signed on as a distribution partner. Katzenberg paid upwards of $6 million per hour of programming and signed Jennifer Lopez, Reese Witherspoon, Liam Hemsworth, Chrissy Teigen, Chance the Rapper, Andy Samberg. At the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in January 2020, Whitman took the stage to announce the launch date, April 6, 2020. The room was full of believers. Nobody in that room was thinking about TikTok. They also weren't thinking about something called COVID. Quibi launched on April 6, 2020, 3 weeks after the United States went into lockdown. The entire use case Quibi had been built around, people on the move, commuting, traveling, killing time in public spaces, had essentially ceased to exist. The audience Katzenberg had spent 2 years designing for was now sitting on a couch next to a television they couldn't watch Quibi on, because at launch, Quibi only worked on a phone. No casting to a TV, no Chromecast, no AirPlay, no desktop browser. While Netflix and Disney Plus were seeing subscriber numbers spike as people binge-watched on the larger screen available, Quibi was insisting its audience squint at a 4-inch device. The app had other problems that had nothing to do with the pandemic. You couldn't share anything. No screenshots, no clips, no social sharing of any kind. In 2020, when TikTok had 66 million monthly users who were spending nearly 15 hours a month watching free, short-form video on their phones and sharing it instantly with everyone they knew, Quibi had built a platform with zero viral capability. There was no way for a viewer who loved something to tell anybody about it. No clip, no screenshot, no word-of-mouth amplification of any kind. And here is the part that stings most in hindsight. TikTok had not snuck up on anyone. By the time Quibi launched, TikTok had already been downloaded 693 million times in 2019 alone, and was the most downloaded app in the world in the first quarter of 2020. The short-form mobile video market Katzenberg had identified as a gap had already been filled, for free, by a platform built around shareability and discovery and an algorithm that showed you exactly what you wanted to watch next. Quibi was asking people to pay $5 a month for content they couldn't share on a platform with no discovery mechanism in a format a Chinese app was already delivering at no cost. The subscriber projections had been set at 7 million in the first year. By October 2020, Quibi had approximately 500,000 paid subscribers, and that was the most it would ever have. Katzenberg called investors on October 21st to tell them it was over. Around $350 million remained in the bank. He chose to return it rather than spending it chasing a number that was not going to change. The shutdown was swift and, to Katzenberg's credit, clean. In an open letter to employees and investors, he and Whitman wrote, "Our failure was not for lack of trying. We've considered and exhausted every option available to us." Katzenberg attempted to sell the content library to Facebook and NBC Universal before the announcement. Neither was interested at a price that made sense, partly because Quibi only owned its content for 2 years, meaning any buyer was essentially purchasing technology, not a catalog. In January 2021, Roku bought the entire Quibi content library for less than $100 million. The shows that had cost $6 million an hour to produce were sold for pennies on the dollar and quietly aired on the Roku channel, where most of them disappeared without a trace. The total loss to investors was somewhere in the range of $1.4 billion. Katzenberg was asked repeatedly whether the pandemic killed Quibi. His first answer was yes. His second answer was more honest. Quote, "Simply to blame it on COVID isn't fair," he said. Whitman put it plainly on CNBC. "We had a new product. We asked people to pay for it before they actually understood what it was." The broader streaming landscape that Quibi had hoped to disrupt kept moving without it. Netflix added 36 million subscribers in 2020. Disney Plus hit 87 million subscribers in its first year. TikTok kept growing. Short-form video became the dominant format on every major platform. Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and eventually almost everything else. The format Katzenberg had identified as the future turned out to be exactly that. He just built it wrong, priced it wrong, locked it down, and launched it into a pandemic. The content library Quibi spent $1.75 billion building is now available for free on Roku. Something I like to do when I share these business blooper stories is end by spending just a little bit of time looking at what actually went wrong. So in this case, what went wrong? The easy answer is the pandemic, and the pandemic didn't help. But Katzenberg himself said it wasn't fair to put it all on COVID, and he was right. The real blooper is that Quibi was built by two people with extraordinary experience in Hollywood and Silicon Valley who had never built a consumer app. And they built Quibi the way Hollywood builds a movie. Enormous upfront investment, A-list talent, premium production values, and the assumption that if the content was good enough, the audience would find it. That's not how apps work. Apps grow through sharing and discovery and viral loops. Quibi deliberately blocked all three of those. You couldn't share a clip, you couldn't take a screenshot, there was no algorithm surfacing content to new users. In the same moment that TikTok was proving that short-form mobile video could spread globally through pure shareability, Quibi was building walls around its content and asking people to pay for the privilege of being trapped inside them. The broader pattern is one that plays out whenever an industry outsider enters a new space with deep experience but the wrong mental model. Katzenberg knew how to make content. He didn't know how people discover and share content in 2020. Those are different skills, and one of them can't be bought with $1.75 billion. He said he was proud to own the failure. That's worth something. But owning it and understanding it are two different things. I'm Ron Trucks, and this is Business Bloopers, part of the Business Daily podcast lineup where we look at how business really works and sometimes how it really doesn't. New episodes drop every weekday with fun, full-length blooper stories like this one on Fridays and quick-hit business history episodes the rest of the week. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. And if you're enjoying the ride, please don't forget to leave a quick review. It helps more people find the story behind the business. And if you want to actually understand business better without the fluff, the buzzwords, or the MBA language, Start by visiting us at bsnsDAILYpodcasts.com.